player. Even Pacers general manager Kevin Richards said after Halliburton's injury that if I knew he was going to get hurt, I would sacrifice that game because I care for the kid so much and not enough.
Oh my god, no me digas este tipo otra vez.
Get two overs with Achilles tear, guys. Just don't. Now, here's where the story takes another turn. Because while all this is going down with Anthony Davis's calf strain, we're learning about how Nico Harrison with Luka Doncic differently with field injuries. When you put these two situations side by side, the contrast is actually disgusting. So check this out. Tim McMahon revealed on the How We Partner podcast that Anthony Davis' personal medical staff is on the Mavericks payroll. The team is paying for AD's private doctors, his trainers, his whole medical team. Now, on its own, that's not necessarily bad, right? AD's 32, he's got an extensive injury history, having his own people makes sense. Here's the problem. When Luka Doncic was in Dallas, he never got that same treatment. The Mavericks used to pay for Luka's personal medical staff. Without the Harrison, we started firing trainers to care for this stuff we trusted and wanted to work with. Casey Smith had been the Mavericks director of health and performance for 20 years, and Harrison fired him after the 2023 season. Then last season, Harrison fired strength coach Jeremy Alsobel and manual therapist Casey Spangler. All guys that were the light. All of them wanted people.
Hey!
The source that they got.
Where's the team? All three of them there.
So Indian national team strength coach Benze Machek, physiotherapist Javier Mario Calvo, and rheology nutritionist Zia Almendros, all out of good money. The Mavericks didn't contribute a dime. So let me get this straight. The Mavericks will pay for Luka Doncic's medical staff, a 25-year-old generational superstar in his absolute prime who risked life to the NBA Finals. But they're paying for Anthony Davis' medical staff, a 32-year-old who's played 14 games since you traded for him. They don't make sense. And it gets worse. There were disagreements between the Mavericks medical staff and the personal team about injury prevalence. Luka had his calf strain. Johan Millsborough thought that he would come back in 2 weeks. Luka's team said he needed 6 weeks. Luka even believed he got the calf strain because the Mavericks rushed him back to the healing groups. But Harrison blamed everything on Luka's conditioning. Harrison doesn't trust the player's medical team. He fires the trainers that Luka likes and tries to rush him back. With Anthony Davis, Harrison paid for the player medical team and still tries to rush him back even when his own doctors are warning about the Achilles tear. The only thing that's consistent here is Nico Harrison being willing to risk player health and time in games. That's the pattern.
If your New Year's resolution is to get a new job, I'd like to show you this. This tool can make your job search less stressful. It's the Monster Job Tracker tool, and it is a great way to get started. You can track your job applications, find new roles to apply for, and get career advice tailored just for you. All you need to do is download the Monster app today.
So now we need to rewind the clock here because everything I told you so far has been about what happened in that real trade, right? Well, then there's whole layers of the story about what was happening before February. This is where things get really interesting because it turns out the Lakers and Anthony Davis have major problems that nobody knew about. If you remember, Anthony Davis was not really happy with Darvin Ham during the Lakers' playoff series against the Denver Nuggets. So Brett Simmons dropped a bombshell report revealing that the Lakers were seeking engaging trade interest in Anthony Davis back in December of 2024. That's about 2 months before the Luka trade went down. The Lakers were only all around the league, seeing what kind of return they could get for AD. Now, why would they do that? Why would the Lakers be shocking a guy who just played 76 games the year before and looked like he was in the best shape of his career? Well, according to multiple team sources who spoke to Clutch Points, AD wasn't always communicating with the Lakers during the offseason, and his fitness levels entering training camps were consistently described as below average. But it goes deeper than that. After the Lakers won the first ever NBA Cup in December of 2003, AD's camp started pushing back on the team. They were frustrated that Davis was playing heavy minutes without adequate court help. AD wanted another big man. He wanted someone else who could make the pain and take some of the physical off of it. But the Lakers didn't prioritize that. Instead, they focused on that third star next to LeBron and AD, which clearly explains this famous LeBron post-game interview. The Lakers were eliminated last year.
You said as David said, he
The team first told Clutch Points that this decision to continue having Davis play heavy minutes with virtually no front court help did not sit well with his camp, creating more friction and tension leading into the 2024-25 season. So you have this situation where AD felt like the Lakers weren't supporting him properly, and the Lakers felt like AD wasn't taking care of his body and staying in shape. Both sides are getting frustrated with each other. And then what happens? When Nico Harrison and Mavericks were the Lakers were dating or traded Tristan Davis for the 2025 season, Harrison allegedly contacted Pelinka. Now, Harrison did go way back. They once had a strong relationship dating back to Harrison's time as an executive at Nike. Pelinka was Kobe Bryant's agent. So there was more of that connection there. And here's where Rob Pelinka absolutely released Nico Harrison. According to reporting, Pelinka used the Mavericks' concerns about Luka's conditioning against them during the trade negotiations. The original framework apparently had Dallas getting Dalton back in the version of things for Luka, but Pelinka convinced Harrison that Luka's conditioning issue made him a risk, which broke down to the ice. So Dallas ended up with Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and one first round pick. That's it. Just realizing how badly Nico Harrison watched the Luka Doncic trade, and just based off of the framework of the trade and the fact that he destroyed his own leverage in this negotiation, he deserved to be fired as general manager based off of that. Think of how crazy this is. The Lakers were dropping Anthony Davis. They had concerns about his conditioning and his fitness levels. When it came time to negotiate with Dallas, Pelinka turned it around and used Dallas' concerns about Luka's conditioning to get a better deal. And Harrison fell for it. The Lakers felt the guy they were seemingly trying to go anyway. They thought the generation was now Luka Doncic, and they paid less than market value because Harrison was so obsessed with Luka play. Man, like that, this is the most lopsided trade in NBA history. And it's even worse when you know all the behind the scenes that was happening. The only other trade that I can think of that was this lopsided was maybe the Pau Gasol trade, but at least the Pau Gasol trade with Grizzlies going to throw in Pau Gasol ended up being one of their greatest players ever. Let's bring this all back here right now. Because understand seven straight games with this kind of swing. Patrick did which is absolutely the right call. But the longer Davis is out, the worse this looks for everybody. Talking about Davis and Davis' trade value has absolutely crazy, right? A Western Conference executive told Tim McMahon that at this point, I don't think we can get for Anthony Davis. And that was before we knew about Harrison trying to rush him back from injury. Now that all this has come out, you've got to imagine other teams are looking at this situation and going, yeah, we're not touching that. If you're a GM considering trading for AD, what are you thinking right now? You know he's 32 years old. You know he's missed 30 of his last 51 games with Dallas. You know he's got 3 years and $175 million left on his contract. And now you also know that the previous regime was so desperate to get him on the court that they were willing to risk